Learning Legal Assistant Week 16, Magical Law in the Wizarding World, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Welcome back to Magical Law in the Wizarding World, the series where we analyze magical law in the Harry Potter books. For this video, we will be analyzing Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, the second book. Quickly within the second chapter of the Chamber of Secrets, we are reminded of the two most basic laws within the Wizarding world: the International Statute of Wizarding Secrecy and the Decree for Reasonable Restriction of Underage Sorcery, when Ron Weasley and his twin brothers come to rescue Harry from his aunt and uncle's house in a flying car. When Ron sees Harry, he says, "Dad came home and said you got an official warning for using magic in front of muggles. You know we're not supposed to do spells outside of school." We are being reminded that it is against the law to use magic in front of muggles, the International Statute of Wizarding Secrecy, and that underage wizards are not allowed to use magic outside of school, Decree for the Reasonable Restriction of Underage Sorcery. Later in Chapter 3, The Burrow, we learn that Arthur Weasley oversees the misuse of Muggle Artifacts Office at the Ministry of Magic. When Harry asks Ron what exactly his dad does, Ron explains it by saying, It's all to do with bewitching things that are Muggle-made, you know, in case they end up back in a Muggle shop or house. Like last year, some old witch died and her tea set was sold to an antique shop. This Muggle woman bought it and took it home and tried to serve her friends tea in it. The teapot went berserk and squirted boiling tea all over the place, and one man ended up in the hospital with the sugar tongs clamped to his nose. Dad was going frantic. It was only him and the old warlock called Perkins in the office. They had to do memory charms and all sorts of stuff to cover it up. Ron also mentions that if his father did a raid on his own house, he would have to put himself under arrest. I am pretty sure that this is the first time raids are mentioned in Harry Potter book, and that is on page 31 of the Chamber of Secrets. However, if I am wrong, please let me know. Raids are when the misuse of Muggle Artifacts Office shows up unannounced to people's houses to collect any bewitched Muggle items that could land back in the hands of Muggles. This is important because in Chapter 4, at Flourish and Blots, we are presented with the scene of Mr. Malfoy selling items to Mr. Borgin at Borgins and Burke's, a known dark magical object antique shop. Mr. Malfoy, while talking to Mr. Borgin, says, "You have heard, of course, that the Ministry is conducting more raids. I have a few items at home that might embarrass me if the Ministry were to call. I have not been visited yet, but there are rumors about a new Muggle Protection Act. No doubt that flea-biting Muggle-loving fool Arthur Weasley is behind it. And as you can see, certain of these poisons might make it appear... ... This shows that there were policies in the Wizarding world that have strong enough consequences that even former Death Eaters, close followers of Voldemort, were concerned of the repercussions of breaking the laws. Speaking of repercussions for breaking laws in the Wizarding world, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets is the first time we were introduced to the jail that exists for wizards, Azkaban. We are introduced to the idea of it when the Minister of Magic, Cornelius Fudge, who we are also first introduced to in this book, comes to take Hagrid to Azkaban to calm people's suspicions that he is the heir of Slytherin and that he has opened the Chamber of Secrets. However, it isn't until Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Book 3, that we learn more about Azkaban. On a side note, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets introduces us to the bribery, blackmail, and corruption that exists in the Wizarding world. Mr. Malfoy brought a letter from the governor to suspend Dumbledore as the headmaster of Hogwarts. However, in Chapter 18, Dobby's Reward, Dumbledore returned to Hogwarts, to which Mr. Malfoy responded by saying, "You've come back. The governor suspended you, but you still saw fit to return to Hogwarts." To which Dumbledore responds by saying, "Well, you see, the other 11 governors contacted me today. It was something like being caught in a hailstorm of owls, to tell you the truth. They'd heard that Arthur Weasley's daughter had been killed and wanted me back here at once. They seemed to think I was the best man for the job, after all. Very strange tales, they told me. too. Several of them seemed to think that you had threatened to curse their families if they did not agree to suspend me in the first place. This shows us that there is still fear in the wizarding world and that there is not a perfect law-abiding world. There is one more instance of law-breaking I would want to bring up. Ron and Harry using Mr. Weasley's flying car to get them to Hogwarts. We are first introduced to Mr. Weasley's flying car by Ron and his twin brothers when they are picking up and kidnapping Harry from his uncle and aunt's house. When Harry inquires about the car, Ron and his brother mention that Mr. Weasley had written a loophole in the laws of Muggle artifacts that was currently the law. Mr. Weasley wrote that you could bewitch Muggle artifacts as long as you weren't planning on using them. That is why he made a car that could fly, but was never planned on flying it. When Ron and Harry were trying to get to platform 9 3/4, they were unable to do so and decided to use Mr. Weasley's car to fly to Hogwarts instead of doing anything else that would have been more practical. Anyways, while Ron and Harry were flying to Hogwarts, they forgot to use the invisibility button and they were seen by Muggles, breaking the International Statute of Wizarding Secrecy, among many other Muggle laws, and caused a ruckus within the wizarding community. We later find out that Mr. Weasley was facing an inquiry at work because of the car he had built to fly that he never intended on flying, but his son flew. I wanted to mention this situation because it shows that there are a certain number of checks and balances within the wizarding world and community. Even though Mr. Weasley was the head of his department, there was still an inquirer into him and the actions he took. Interestingly enough, Ron and Harry somehow managed to escape most legal punishments when they break the law. But in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, we do see some people held to higher standards. Join me next week as we discuss Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.